In this section of the course, we're going to talk about how to shoot better food photos using your iPhone. Before looking at the specific tips on how to get better food photos, it's important that we take a step back and look at the fundamentals of photography, learn how to get better photos in general. That's going to translate and serve as sort of a foundation for us when we talk about food photos. In a very basic way, all photography can be broken down as the interplay of light, composition, and subject. These three elements work together to make an image and ultimately inform one another. Because of the way that these three elements interact and inform one another, it's important to consider all three of them when you're taking photos. You might find a great subject to take a picture of, but fine-tuning your light and your composition is that extra step to take that good photo and turn it into an amazing photo. When we talk about food photography, we can add a fourth important element here that we're going to discuss in great length, which is color. Let's first look at subject and how that comes into play when we're taking food photos. I've mentioned this before, but a crucial element when it comes to food photos is taking pictures of good looking food. Again, your food doesn't need to be exceptional Michelin star quality food. It simply needs to look good. Food that has bright colors, is tidy, isn't too oily or saucy, make for great food photos. Plating can make or break the way that your food is photographed. Plating your food tastefully, craftfully, and not too messy is going to go a long way in making your food really stand out and look good. Photographing your food fresh can make a huge difference as well. You don't want your food to be sitting out too long when you're taking photos of it, especially if it's a hot meal. When you take pictures of dessert or pastries, you have a little bit more leeway when it comes to this. However, if it's a cold dessert, then taking pictures of it under sunlight can quickly melt it. You may need to keep popping it back into the fridge or a cool environment until you get the shot that you want. Since it's so important to photograph food fresh, it can make a big difference to have the scene or whatever you're setting up for your photos already set up before your food is prepared. That way, when the food is ready and plated, you can simply bring it into that setting. You already know how you're going to photograph it, and you can just start taking your pictures and experimenting. When we talk about subject, it's not only the main subject or that meal that comes into play in our images, it's also the environment surrounding our meal. It's generally important to consider what's in the background of your image or what's surrounding your food. Decluttering your image is a good first step. Making sure that your meal is the focus of your image, is dominant in your image, is very important. Thinking about the surfaces that your food photos are taken on is very important as well. Marble slabs, wood cutting boards, coffee tables are very common with food photography and can be used to great effect. You can add some texture to your surfaces by playing with tablecloths or linens or tea cloths. This can add some color and texture to an otherwise flat surface. We can use set decoration like staging or decorating to draw the viewer's eye into our main subject or create a story or some sort of narrative surrounding the meal. Something like a pastry might be better suited for a neutral, clean, modern background where the precision of baking also matches the precise modern environment that's surrounding it. Choosing an environment that reflects the mood that food is giving off naturally will make for a much more impactful photo. When it comes to staging and decorating your environment, it can be useful to think about some of the ingredients that are in your meal, use those to decorate the surrounding of your meal. For example, these photos that I took of this mango cheesecake has mango in the background and little coconut flakes scattered around the image and makes sense to the meal that I'm taking a photo of, but also creates a little bit more visual interest to the image, creates a little bit more balance in the background with those mangoes, and the coconut adds something to kind of draw the eye through the frame. This can also help to create a little bit more storytelling in your image. When you take pictures of food at home, you have the most amount of flexibility to set up props or set up an environment to take your food photos in. Whereas if you take photos at a restaurant, you have less control over that environment, but it may be perfectly curated to their menu and you have a lot less work and setup that you actually have to do to get a nice looking environment. Finding angles and ways to shoot around distracting elements is going to become very crucial when you shoot in a restaurant. If you shoot something like a top down view or a lay flat image, then a lot of those distracting elements at a restaurant start to disappear. But when you shoot more eye level with your food and you're shooting into a restaurant, then again, people can show up in the background and more distracting elements can start to appear. When I take photos of food at a restaurant, it's common that I rearrange the elements that are on the table, clear the phones, clear the wallets, get rid of all of the distracting elements that are on that table before taking that photo. All in all, consider your environment and whatever is surrounding your meal, because while it's not the main subject of your photo, it can play a very crucial role in focusing the attention on your main subject in your photo. Storytelling is that extra little step when taking food photos that can really separate your food photos apart from the rest. Storytelling is when you start to infuse some sort of narrative into your images through either props, your environment, the location, the lighting. You can essentially use any element of photography to infuse some sort of story or narrative into your images. Storytelling can be creating an atmosphere that makes people want to cook or eat, or is something that they can simply just relate to. I'm sure that many people can relate to cozying up on the couch with a warm cup of coffee and their favorite book. Taking a picture of that whole scene can really put people in your shoes and capture what is commonly associated with a morning cup of coffee. When you start to think about storytelling in food photography, it's a lot more than just focusing on the dish itself. Ask yourself questions like, what does this dish represent? Who are the people that commonly eat this type of food? What is common to do when you have this type of food? All of these things can lead you to a certain type of direction and way that you can use all of the elements of photography to benefit that narrative and really express that narrative in your photo. Adding some sort of a human touch is a little bit of an extension off of storytelling. This can be as simple as showing hands peeking into a frame. And just by simply doing this, you're adding that human element that a lot of people desire when they're looking at images and can sometimes be lacking in food photography. It can be as simple as bringing food to a table, offering a drink, holding some type of ingredient, lighting a candle on the table, setting a table. There are many different ways that we engage with our food. Thinking of ways to capture that engagement can benefit your story or the narrative that you're infusing into your image. Capturing action shots can also be a great way of adding a human element. Capturing milk being poured into coffee or cutting into a pie. All of these little things, again, are going to add that human element while also adding an interesting element to the food itself.